Well, hello again, Pastor Ray Barnett here with you. Glad that you could be with me on the Oasis. And as always, I wish you a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening, depending on what time you're watching this broadcast. Today, I didn't know if I would be able to get out here to the lazy river with you. This is very close to my house, as you know, very convenient for me. But we had another torrential downpour last night and this morning, and did want to do the video for you, but I'm very glad that I was able to get out here. It's not bad now. The sky just started to clear up, so here I am, and here we are. And today I want to ask you this question. You get up this morning. Again, you may be watching this in the late evening, afternoon. Now, how did you feel when you got up this morning? Are you feeling like so many people are feeling at this moment in their personal history as well as our world history? Did you get up this morning feeling overwhelmed? Think about it. My guess is that a great majority of you got up this morning feeling overwhelmed. So much to do, so much going on, so much activity, and as the old phrase used to go, or still goes, there's places to go, people to meet, things to do, which is fine. That only means that you're alive. But when there's too many places to go, too many people to meet, too many things to do, and so on, you get overwhelmed. And so what happens when you feel overwhelmed is that you are tempted to be overcome. This is a kind of a recurrent theme for me here on the Oasis, because as I've mentioned in times past, we are all up against it. Again, I mentioned a few days ago, I don't know of hardly anyone that's not feeling overwhelmed. Now, at that point, especially if you feel overwhelmed frequently, I mean, it just keeps coming at you. This is a phrase I use with my wife quite often. If I'm talking about myself, and I'm talking about her and I mention the fact that it just keeps coming. It just keeps coming, just keeps coming. And if that type of situation gets into your head, you're going to start to feel like giving up. And there may be some of you watching right now that you already have given up. So I want to just mention to you that because you're overwhelmed does not mean that you are overcome. I don't know, and my guess is going to be that probably very few of you are fans of boxing. I was an amateur fighter when I was, well, young. And, I really enjoyed the sport. I really did. When, in the passage of time and as I've gotten older, I've been able to see just how really brutal it is. Let me give you an example. I was in my lag time, which I call lag time. At the end of a day, come 7:30 p.m., I'm pretty much functionally useless, just tired, And so I may go on here onto YouTube and just watch some things that may interest me. And last night I was rewatching a heavyweight championship fight. It took place in 1919 on July the 4th between Jack Dempsey and Jess Willard. Jess Willard was 6 feet 6 inches tall. I think Jack Dempsey was 6'1". Dempsey at the time probably only weighed 180 some odd pounds. Jess Willard weighed 240 pounds. Anyway, Willard was the reigning champion. And from what I remember and read, he had done a lot of trash talking to Dempsey, who was born. I think he was one of 13 children, and he, didn't have it easy. But then again, back then, who did have it easy? So the championship fight took place once again July the 4th in the year 1919, and boxing aficionados or experts do declare that this may just have been one of the most brutal beatings that a fighter ever took when Jack Dempsey beat Jess Willard on that day, July the 4th, 1919. And so it entered my mind to watch this fight again, and I did last night. And it really is, I'll use the word amazing, how much punishment a man, which that would be Jess Willard, was able to take. I mean, again, if you don't like violence or you're not a fan of boxing, probably not something you want to watch. But what amazes me is not the fact that Dempsey beat Willard, but how much this man, Willard, how much punishment he absorbed. I mean, he was really brutally beaten. And of course, nowadays they'll stop a fight much sooner than back in 1919, 102 years ago. But I've always been amazed whenever I've seen that fight, just how much punishment Jess Willard absorbed. And here's an interesting thing too, it will tie into what I want to share with you today. Jess Willard took an amazing beating, yet lived to be 86 years of age. Dempsey lived to be 87. If you're a fan of boxing, you remember Max Schmeling, when Joe Louis beat him during the Second World War, a German against an American. It was a big deal for Americans. And Louis beat Schmeling. Well, Schmeling lived to be 99 years old. If you watch these fights, if you have watched some of these fights, you don't expect that men that take such a terrible beating, or have taken such a terrible beating, to have longevity on their side. And most times they don't. But Willard lived to be 86. Dempsey lived to be 87. And the point here is that Willard took just an awful, awful beating. Yet he had longevity on his side. So using that as an example, you can see a man, again, if you care to watch it, I don't know that you will, you'll see a man take a brutal beating, but in that ring on that day, he never gave up. He lost, but he never gave in, and he never gave up. The commentator for the fight, we're going back 100 years, describes the ref's decision not to stop the fight. In his words, saying that referee believed in the old school that the only way a champion goes out is on his back. And that may be much overstated, but for you, there is a point to it. Champions go out on their back. I mean, even if you lose, you don't lose for lack of effort. You don't lose because not only did you give life everything that you had, but in the process took quite a pasting. Well, this is true of many, many champions in many sports, but specifically Jess Willard. He never gave up. I would think, in watching that fight and reviewing it in my mind right now, that it was probably more prudent and wise that he just realized he was beaten from the first round. He was already almost out of it. But again, to draw the illustration to your life and to give you some encouragement. Today, as I said, you got up, and you say, I'm overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed by everything. But to be overwhelmed does not mean that you're overcome. And if, in the end, you really didn't win the way you wanted to win, I mean, in life, I think I've told you that my life hasn't even remotely turned out the way I thought it would be and the way I planned it to be when I was younger. But for me, I am not going to give in to a mentality of defeat if I'm going to go out, and one day I will go out. If I lose, I'll lose on my back, not for lack of effort. Being overwhelmed does not mean you're overcome. But here's the thing. In order to be a champion in life, which is really the only thing that honestly that matters, you're going to have the attitude that you never quit. You're going to have the attitude that you don't give up no matter how much pain, no matter how much suffering, no matter how much is up against you. Again, no matter how overwhelmed you may feel, or no matter how overwhelmed you may actually be, there is no giving in and there is no giving up. This is how champions are made, not just in boxing, but in life. They just have that resilience to keep coming back, to keep going at it, to keep doing whatever it takes. I hate to run a metaphor into the ground, but maybe I will. I remember watching a fight years ago after a dance. Years ago they used to have these dances at the high schools and so on. And a fight ensued between two young, we were all young at the time. A fight ensued between two guys over whatever, I don't know what they were fighting over, but I was there. And the one guy he took a terrible beating. He was down on the ground. He got back up and he went back at it again. The other guy just dominated him, put him back on the ground again, and he got up. And this went on. And I was saying, for quite a while, I was saying in my mind, boy, I think it'd be a smart thing right now for this guy that's on the ground to give up. But you know what? He never did. He never gave up. Finally, the guy that was hitting him just stuck out his hand and shook his hand. He says, that's enough. I think the guy who knew he was going to get beat by this larger opponent understood the principle. As long as you don't give in, and as long as you don't give up, you're going to have a measure of success. And hopefully, ultimately, to have the true success that comes with Jesus Christ and knowing Jesus Christ. You see, we hear in the scriptures this phrase, for we are more than conquerors through him that loved us. In that 8th chapter of Romans, you can read it later, the Apostle Paul goes through all the things that both he had faced in life and other Christians at the time were facing in life, and many Christians around the world face. Or for that matter, just many people like yourself. But he said that we are more than conquerors through him that loved us. You have to keep in mind, now again, this is speaking to professing Christians, you have to keep in mind that we are being supplied with God's Spirit. Let me just for a moment say energy. We are being supplied constantly with the ability to overcome. We don't have to quit. We shouldn't quit. One thing is a guarantee. If you quit, you cannot win. So when it comes to your nervous symptoms, to your depressions, to your anxieties, to those thoughts that come into your mind, the fear of this could be that, and maybe I'm going to die, and nothing ever works out for me, and so on. If you give in to that and you quit, it's guaranteed that you're going to lose. If you don't quit, one way or the other, depending on who defines success, you're going to be successful. And even though you were overwhelmed, even though you are overwhelmed, even though in the future you're going to be overwhelmed, you need not be overcome. This is my credo. This is my approach to life. I'm down quite a bit, but I'm not staying down. I'm getting back up, and I'm going to go to it again. So I want you to think about that. Because you're overwhelmed today, or you're going to be overwhelmed tomorrow, or you've been overwhelmed in the past, and so on, that does not mean that you are overcome. Stick with it. You keep going at it. You keep cultivating the attitude of being relentless. And eventually, you will be the victor. You will win. So let me pray for you today. Father God, I pray for my friends, many of whom, if not all, I know are feeling overwhelmed by life, by the difficulties of life, the things that are coming up against them. I ask you today, God, to encourage them, to strengthen them with might by your Spirit that's in the inner man. And I pray all these things today in Jesus' mighty name. Amen. All right, that's what I had for you today. Overwhelmed, but not overcome. As always, I give those of you who are not subscribed an invitation. I always mention that this is a small group, but we're gaining subscribers fairly frequently. It's a small group, but it's a really good group. It really is. And if you'd like to be part of us, just subscribe, hit the notification bell, and good to go. If not, as I encourage you from time to time, you're auditing these little teachings and exhortations that I give, that's fine too. In either case, I always appreciate the thumbs up. That kind of helps us out here with this algorithm situation, the metrics of YouTube. But either way, God willing, I will be with you here tomorrow on the Oasis. Until then, God bless.